Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Avatar action figure review. This one is going to be for the Diamond Select Toys Wave 2 Book 1 Aang. So Wave 2, as you can see in the back here, is going to be obviously our Season 1 Book 1 Aang and Azula. So my Aang shipped and arrived like much earlier than Azula. Even though I ordered them from the same place, at the same time, the same order. Aang shipped like 2 weeks ago and I have it, and Azula hasn't shipped yet. So even though I'm doing the Aang now, it probably will be a few weeks before I get around to doing Azula because, like I said, she hasn't actually shipped yet. Don't really know how exactly that happens, given that I assume these figures come together in that it's probably like 2 or 3 versions of each figure in a case. So how only one got shipped out and not the other, I don't really know. But anyway, we're here to talk about the next Aang in this line. So we got Book 3 Aang in Wave 1, as you can see there. And here is our Book 1 Aang. As you can see there, he's going to come with a ton of accessories, much more like what we actually wanted after Wave 1. And the other thing to say here before I sort of get behind the camera to open this up is just that they've changed the packaging. This is not the Walgreens exclusive version. This is the deluxe edition, basically. So they've changed the packaging from Wave 1 as well, and I think it looks a whole lot better. The packaging is more like the Walgreens exclusive one, and I just think it's better because it's smaller. If anyone wondering, I did actually keep at least some of the packaging from Wave 1. This is Wave 1 packaging for Aang. You can see here it's quite big. And then this is, it's still, you know, a relatively big box, but it's nowhere near as big as this one was. I thought this was just overly complicated in that it wasn't just a box, it was like a giant bubble on a card, but then they also kind of wanted it to be like half like a box, and it was just a little bit complicated to open in that you have to rip this bit off the side, then take it all out, and then it was packaged, you know, within that. And just, it was so wide and thick and kind of awkward. Whereas this is just, you know, it's a box, and, you know, obviously I got the 3 from Wave 1 in one box. It was a massive, massive thing that it came in. This one figure just came in a relatively small box, so that was nice to see. But yeah, it's nice to see them kind of improve the packaging, and even though, as you can see here, like this Aang comes with like a really large accessory of the full splayed out glider, it still fits in a relatively small box, so that is very, very nice to see. So yeah, I'm just going to get behind the camera, we're going to open this up and get into the proper review. Okay, so let's open up the figure. So let me just cut this bit of tape here along the bottom. Okay, so we should just be able to open this up. Okay, so inside you get Aang in the plastic shell, of course, and again, I think this is where like the immediate improvement is, like sort of 3 layers of plastic here. So bottom layer has, you know, the glider splayed out, the normal glider with it folded in, and then the whole arm for the stand. And then obviously the figure itself and the sort of smaller accessories are in, you know, 2 pieces of plastic you have to sort of pop open. Okay, there's some tape here as well. So I definitely take that as an improvement over the previous packaging, where they used a lot of sort of like kind of twist tie type things in the figure. There still are some here holding in Momo and 2 holding in Aang, but it definitely isn't as extreme as it was on the Wave 1 figures, so that's definitely good to see. So here is the base for the figure, so hole for the stand and the foot. And let me just snip open these plastics. So there's our Momo out. And let's cut this open here. Okay, so it's just one twist tie holding Aang in. And then we will come back to the hands a little bit later on. So, okay, here is Aang straight out of the packaging. And as you can see here, the immediate thing I notice is the way they have his, kind of the top part of his outfit here. It's kind of very floaty and very locked in position. It's the kind of very hard plastic here. So I get why they have it like this, because obviously they want this Aang to be able to do the kind of glider holding pose, which we've seen him pictured with before. But it is very wiggly, for sure, all over the place straight away, just out of the packaging, which, you know, isn't the best look. I wish it was like softer material so that it perhaps would fold a little bit more, and they had just the cuts done in such a way where it naturally droops down when he's just standing normally, and then when you need to move it up, the cuts allow you to move it up and for this to move around a bit. So the first wave, sort of one of the problems was that they didn't put enough cuts in the material, and so you had kind of problems with the way kind of all the material worked. But outside of just this opening bit, this Aang is a better look, I suppose, than Wave 1 at the general sort of body that they use here on these figures. So again, there's a few immediate problems that I notice here. One is that, at least on my figure, you can clearly see here, this thigh piece is not painted, whereas this one is. And obviously the plastic just on its own is a different color than the painted pieces. And you can see it as well here on like the pins and in like the side of his leg and stuff like that. And even this kind of a hip piece here. So that's not particularly great. That's a kind of, I guess, a QC problem. I doubt it's a thing across every figure where just his right thigh is just not painted, but his left one is. So that's kind of weird. He comes packaged with the fist hands on, but obviously he comes with 4 whole other sets of hands. But like I said, the big thing here is, I suppose, covering the articulation, because like we've seen in Aang before, we had the Wave 1 Aang here, which was obviously Book 3 Aang. So we roughly know the way Diamond Select do their articulation, and for the most part, like, it's fine. Like in the legs, you know, pretty good. It goes forward, it goes back a decent amount. It allows you to put the leg out. You've got a thigh swivel here, so that's pretty good. You do have the double jointed knee, but if I remember correctly, yeah, the bottom joint on the knee is a lot tighter than the top one. This has always been a bit of a problem with these, and my one seems kind of locked a little bit here. And yeah, I feel like I would risk breaking the figure if I attempted to use the lower knee joint on this Aang. The top one works, but I'm not getting a lot of play with the other bit. Let's see how the other knee works. I'll try the bottom bit first. So yeah, it's not great. I think it's going to work a little bit better. You know, it's never good when you take an action figure out of the packaging and it feels like it's like almost locked into position. And that was always the way I felt with the first wave. Over the year, it's felt like the figures have like loosened out a little bit, but definitely straight out of the packaging, a lot of the joints feel like really overly tight. And like I said here, like I can barely get the knee joints to function properly here. And that just is not great QC. So already like a paint issue here, and I can't really get the bottom of the knees to function all that well here without potentially like modifying this and trying to like really force it. We do have a waist joint here, which is fine. And then we have a sort of upper ab joint as well, so you can kind of wobble around. That's nice to see. Shoulder goes straight out, as we've sort of seen before. and it can rotate all around. The elbows, as ever, is a major problem with these figures. Okay, so there it is pointing out. So, yeah, you can get like... You can get roughly a, like, I'd say 80 degree sort of bend from straight, just normally. But you sort of have to force it. And then, look there, just trying to force it to 90 degrees. I've popped the whole arm out. And you can see the way it's constructed. I think it's a really poorly constructed joint of the elbows in these figures. Especially when like you look at like kind of how well thought out for the most part the leg is. To have the elbow just be, to me, a bit of a mess of a joint. And I'm pretty familiar with a lot of different action figure lines, and this just doesn't seem to work for me. So, yeah, that's not good. For figures where you want there to be decent articulation, and especially this figure where it seems like one of the main aims of this figure was that he can do the holding the glider pose, it kind of feels weird that his elbows are basically non-functional. And now, based off the Zuko, where this happened to as well, where I just tried to use the joint a bit and the elbow popped out, that's going to be pretty loose from here on out. Of like, anytime I try to move it, I'm basically moving the elbow joint out. So that's not great, and it's probably the same on this side as well. Yeah, and I don't know, I'm shocked that like 2-3 waves in, they haven't really made any move to fix that. It just, to me, is not a great look for these figures that happens. That the elbows are like that, and even on the upcoming Ozai, who's going to be like a full-size figure, so they have more, you know, plastic to work with, he's still using the same type of elbow joint. The wrists are fine because like there's a joint built into the wrist, that's fine, and then because of the way it's constructed, he has a full movement. So the hand movement is fine. Literally one of the main issues on these figures, I think, is just the elbows, and then just the type of figure that it is. It does have sort of very almost like needlessly tight joints. So then let's take a look at the head movement. So that's pretty good, as expected. It's sort of on a ball joint. The head sculpt, of course, will have, I suppose, I've seen a decent amount of people talk about the head sculpt. It's not like amazing. It's maybe a bit too mouth open. I think in person, it doesn't actually look as extreme. It does come across more kind of like, oh, it's just a happy Aang. I think I probably, if I was the one to choose it, I wouldn't have went for such an extreme happy smile. But otherwise, I think it is a very good, accurate representation of the characters' faces. And that I think overall, they've done a pretty good job across Wave 1 and 2 with the faces. Obviously, we'll wait and see if they fully deliver on Toph and Sokka, who didn't really look all that great initially. And then, yeah, the final bit is just the ankles. So, yeah, the ankles feel a lot better here. I noticed on my Wave 1 figures, the ankles were very tight, but the joints feel a little bit smoother here. So that's good to know. So that's pretty good. But yeah, I'm really disappointed that I can't really get the lower knee to function. Okay, there we go. There we go. Finally got it there. But I did feel like I had to absolutely force it. So, yeah, really unnecessarily tight joint. I probably would just have to mess with it a little bit more, but you can see there it is a double jointed knee. Can I get the other one going? No, not that one. I probably have to mess around with the other knee to get that to work. So, yeah, that's a little bit of the problem. I think you probably saw that with my Wave 1 reviews as well. It's just that certain joints in these figures are going to be like that. And then, like I said, I am pretty disappointed with the idea of like just this one piece not painted on the front, whereas this one is. I don't even know how well that shows up on camera, but you can sort of see the difference in kind of color between the two kind of thigh pieces. And there's how it looks from behind. So, you know, overall, it definitely looks like Book 1 Aang, but I think there's just a fundamental problem with the sort of Avatar base figure that they're using for their figures. With regards to the way they do the joint cuts, the elbow as I think just a fundamentally flawed joint, And then I think they are really, really struggling to do the kind of clothing properly here, in that this piece just really is just floating here and is so like solid in the way it is that it doesn't really sit right, and is very much molded to be in like a position so he can hold the glider like that. Like it looks fine when he's doing poses like that, but when he's not doing poses like that, it's just like he's got these weird shoulder pads, which kind of feels a bit weird. Before I move on to the accessories, one thing I wanted to try was, can you head swap between the Wave 1 and Wave 2 Aang? So I've done this before. The heads do just pop off because they are just on a ball joint. We'll see. I don't see why it shouldn't. So let's see if we can get a more normal expression on Aang. So yeah, that is actually fine. Like if you wanted to use just the Wave 1 Aang, you can get the Wave 3 Aang and just put this head on. Probably something they maybe should have included as an accessory is a different head. But you can see there is the figure just looking a little bit better overall with the more neutral but still happy expression from the previous Waves Aang. And then here is here's Book 3 Aang with the wide open mouth expression. So that's good. At least it seems like they're going to be consistent across this in terms of the molding of like heads will be able to swap no problem, hands will be able to swap no problem. The one difference is, of course, Aang here doesn't have any clothing that goes up to his wrists, whereas in his Wave 1 it does. So all the hands from Wave 1 Aang are molded to have a bit of the kind of yellow outfit on them. So you can't really do the hand swap between them just because of accuracy reasons, but the head swap does work, which is nice to see. So depending on which one you want to, I suppose, more heavily display, you have a choice with the head sculpt, which is definitely good to see. Let's take a look at the Momo next. This is a different Momo than the Wave 1 Momo, so it's nice to see they did a new mold to just have Momo in a different position here. So this is one that's meant to be sort of just him sort of on all fours type position like this, which I kind of quite like. I think the other one was in a more of a sort of sitting position where he's like that and he has his front paws between his legs. So that's pretty good. The legs are a little bit bent out of the plastic, but I suppose you can just sort of maneuver them into the right position. But the paint job on Momo is pretty good. You can see the kind of green in the eyes there, the detail like inside the ears, on the tail, along the back. Definitely a good job. And that's probably one of the main things about this figure, is that I don't know how much of an interest there necessarily is in people wanting Wave 1 Aang necessarily, but the fact that you get a different Momo and then it comes with like all this stuff as well is definitely the highlight. So let's get the glider out. So here is the glider. It's a full piece. It doesn't feel like really flimsy at all, because like it's obviously not molded to actually have any action to it. But it feels very sturdy. Like it feels like even if you tried to, it'd take quite a bit of effort to snap it, because it's like fully solid like along here. So that's very good to see in terms of like, you're probably going to have to mess around quite a bit to get a good position of him on this. So it's nice to see that it is very, very sturdy overall. And obviously it's like painted on both sides. And then the two holes here, I believe, are part of the new stand piece that we get to hold him in position. So we'll get to that in a second. Here is the staff as it is normally, sort of not folded. So that's nice to see. I thought it was a bit of a weak point with the Wave 1 Aang, that he didn't come with the glider, his new glider, or the unfolded version or folded version of it. So this one comes with both. So he has his weapon, because obviously this Aang doesn't come with an airbending effect part, whereas the Wave 1 Aang did. He came with this, which Wasn't a particularly great airbending effect part, but it was something. Whereas at least this one comes with all sort of Aang's like equipment, which is good. Final bit is of course the stand, which I believe is exactly the same as it is before. Yeah, and then it comes with the same parts, except this bit on the end here. This bit is new. So this clear bit here is obviously built to attach into the two holes here to act as obviously the stand to hold the glider in position. So if you attach Aang to the glider, this is a way where you can basically use the stand, because of course you're going to have Aang up against it here. So you can't, he actually doesn't have a hole in his back like the other figures do. So I guess that's the only way to actually use the stand with this Aang. That is kind of weird that they didn't give him a hole in his back to use with the stand. You just have to use the foot kind of stand here with that. But anyway, that's that. And then obviously if you put the stand fully together like so, you obviously can use the stand to put in a kind of glider style position like so. Or I guess depending on what way you orientate it, you can do like off to the side type thing. So we'll try and put a pose together as best we can. So we'll just put the stand off here to the side. There we go. And we'll get into the other hands that the figure comes with. So overall, you know, this Aang comes with like 10 hands, which is kind of good. And one more to get out. There we go. That's everything out of the packaging now. So he obviously has the, like I said before, the fist hands on the figure already in the packaging. You also have a kind of left and right sort of splayed open hands, like so. Which I guess are meant to be sort of more kind of airbending style hands of just like having this sort of open out position, which is quite good. You get the sort of, I don't know what way to really call these, but he has the sort of like fingers together like that. Hands, they're not for holding anything, so I'm not exactly sure. I guess it's just for doing some martial arts poses or something like that. So that's nice that they included that. You get these hands here, which are to hold something. I think these ones, the way, yeah. So you get two pairs of like kind of holding hands. One has like a tighter grip, and then one is more open. It's kind of hard to see on camera there, but my guess is that the tighter ones are for using the glider when it's open, and the open ones are for using the staff. So I think that's the way it's meant to be. Yeah, that's definitely the way it is. So yeah, you just put the hands on here. Yeah, and then you obviously can attach them onto the figure then. I suppose it depends on what exactly you do with the articulation. Let's just try and do him holding the staff hand type thing. Okay, so they come out okay. And then, yeah, so we have to get the hands right. So right hand goes in here, left hand in here. Okay, so yeah, that actually works pretty well. Again, because of the limitation of the elbows, I don't know how many good poses you can necessarily get with him holding the staff all that well. But there he is with it. So, you know, it's nice to see that you can at least get something with it. You can get the basic poses, but the limitation of the elbows, I think, is a major problem the second you get into trying to particularly pose the characters well with their weapons. But that's that. And then we'll, I suppose, finish up by just trying to do a pose on the glider. So this is the one that they sort of heavily, you know, marketed the figure on. That was like the main picture we've had for the whole time. this figure's been kind of coming out is just book 1 Aang with the glider. So let's see what we can do here. So we have to get his hands into the right position here, like so. Okay, there's one arm in position, and okay, that one came off, but let me just get these into the right position here. So yeah, it's a bit of a stretch here, but let's try and do this. Okay, that one locks in, and okay, there we go. Aang is holding the glider. You pretty much have to use the very edges on both sides, just because of the limitation on the elbows. They kind of has to be there. He can't hold it really any other way. So yeah, that holds on, and I'm guessing we just have to, yeah, typically he just kind of tucks his feet in, I think, behind this bit here. So yeah, there's Aang on the glider. So, you know, it actually fits, you know, quite well, just with, yeah, locking it in like so. And then let's try and do a pose with the stand here. So we'll just attach the stand into the back. And you can see, like, there it is, like, just standing up. But we're meant to do something a little bit more. So what way am I going to do this? Yeah, I kind of just want to have it pointing out, don't I? It's hard to get the balance right, just because of the way that stand is. It's like, it almost takes away some of the articulation here, because you almost want to use it like this, but then it doesn't really pose correctly like that. I probably have to orientate the stand a little bit differently. Probably actually don't even need this middle section. It's probably keeping it too high up, but you just want some sort of a pose like this. Again, this is where, like, it's hard to balance the whole figure with a big accessory like that. Okay, so something like that, I guess, is sort of the pose you kind of want. Again, the thing with figures like this is you have to take your time to pose them correctly. And at least that pose works. And I think that's probably the way I will keep this figure. Because I don't find the Diamond Select figures are particularly great for, like, dynamic posing necessarily, because of how stiff so many of the joints are, how useless the elbows are, and how, depending on the way the figure is, you kind of can't use some of the articulation. Like, the Wave 1 Aang, the major problem with it was that, even though it's super accurate, like his outfit, you basically can't use his left shoulder or most of his right leg, because the outfit is so locked into position. Like, you can't really move his leg up unless you super heavily, like, move this around. Like, they tried to obviously account for that with this, but they obviously didn't have the budget to come up with some sort of solution that makes it look natural and also pose well. And then Aang, even though the other characters have it, for some reason all they needed to do was just put a split down the side here, and then Aang would have been able to use this leg a bit more effectively. But as it is, you basically can't. He should be able to put his legs all the way out to the side, but as it is, you can't. Because there's just, this whole piece ends up moving in, and then it's blocked by the torso. So that's the fundamental limitation with the Diamond Select figures. Unless they fundamentally change their sort of general mold for the Avatar figures to have better elbows and better QC on the joints, and in my case, you know, make sure all the parts are painted that are meant to be painted, then that's the problem, and you'll probably notice that, like, you know, I think wave one of this line did receive a decent amount of criticism, just because the figures are fine, but they're not really that great in terms of, you know, just in a neutral pose, they look solid. They look really good in sort of some of the poses you can do with them, but they're not great action figures because you can't utilize the joints as well as you perhaps would want, and there's just like fundamental design problems of, like, the elbows have to be better going forward. Like, this figure just barely does that pose, and he only does that pose because they had to engineer this part of his outfit to basically only do that pose, and it looks kind of weird otherwise. So this is why I think we need to be so thankful, I suppose, of the fact that McFarlane Toys also have the Avatar license, and we're going to see a line of Avatar and Korra figures for them coming at some point next year. The competition is definitely going to be, I think, important to making sure, you know, we get Avatar figures done right. Diamond Select have made a pretty solid attempt, but there's been a lot of key issues. And hopefully McFarlane, you know, I have full confidence that in general, like, their joints will be better, they'll be better QC. The problem is just going to be, you know, can they get the sculpt right? I think their figures are going to be a slightly bigger scale. I think this is a 6-inch scale. They're going to be 7-inch, I think. Or I might have that reversed. No, I think they're a slightly bigger scale. So that should help overall. And the biggest thing is just, you know, elbows need to be better than this. They need to be better than, you know, hopefully getting 70, 80 degrees. No, we need to get way, way more than that. Give us double jointed elbows, or just give us a cut good enough to actually get more than 90 degrees out of the elbow, and not have it feel like when you're moving the figure around that it's just creaking all over the place because of how sort of tight the tolerances are. And that's what needs to improve with these figures going forward. So, you know, second wave, I'm still excited because, like, obviously Avatar action figures still feel very unique and new. And this figure is fun because he comes with so much stuff, like the big accessory of the glider, the fact that you can actually do a decent pose. He comes with this and he can hold it, is at least nice. Can't pose with it particularly well, but he has it. And then they throw in a Momo. But obviously it's not particularly exciting that this is the fourth figure in the line and it's another Aang. Now, obviously, Azula is the other figure in this wave, and when I get her, I will review her. Wave 3 is going to be Toph and Ozai. That's coming out in, I think, February. That should be fun. Wave 4 is going to be Sokka and Sozin's Comet Aang to go with the Ozai, which, again, should be fun. And then we know they're working on waves 5 and 6, which hopefully includes the likes of Iroh, hopefully a Book 3 Katara to go with our Book 1 Katara. Mei, Ty Lee, Suki, those type of characters are the sort of characters I think many people would be wanting after that. Because, like, okay, after all you've done all these Aangs, you've pretty much covered all the Aangs that you need to. There's pretty much kind of one more Katara you need to do. Like, yes, they could do Book 2 Katara, and her outfit is slightly different, but I think you would want to prioritize the very different Katara, the Book 3 one, over that. I don't know how much of a demand there's going to be for a Book 1 Zuko, but that's something you can do maybe. But yeah, I'd say Iroh, Mei, Ty Lee, Suki are probably the big ones next on the list. And then after that, I think you're getting into your Boomies, maybe a Jet, Roku, those type of characters. But yeah, so there's our kind of wave 1 characters together, Aang and Katara. And again, statically they look good. It's just as action figures they have problems. Elbows, articulation, the way they do some of the clothing doesn't particularly work as well, but still relatively happy at the price point that they're at. But I do believe McFarlane Toys are going to be a massive improvement over these. I'll wait and see until we actually see them, but I have more faith in them as a company than Diamond Select necessarily. So they're my thoughts on the Wave 2 Aang from Diamond Select Toys. In the comments, let me know what your thoughts were, but that has been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.